boy, do we have a treat for you tonight. We have Joyce Maynard here. She is New York Times bestselling author and author of Count the Ways. Her newest book is out, but she's also an author of 17, I believe, other books. Is that right?
That's true.
Awesome. So I read her book a week or two ago and couldn't put it down. Glued to it, you guys, glued to it. And we're going to talk about it today. This is something that when fiction meets nonfiction, and it's something that you can apply to real life, and just the storytelling here is fantastic. And I have so many questions. Now, this is a live, so you can always put your questions in the chat too. So make sure you hit that.
Please do. I love to hear from readers. I really do.
And so hit that unmute button and follow us, and hit that follow button too, guys, because we are going to have just a great live for you right now. And so I have this pressing question I first need to ask you, because I saw something that maybe I'm crazy, but when I read At Home in the World that you wrote several years back.
A memoir, we should tell you.
Yes, that one's a memoir. And by the way, these are all linked down below, so you guys can grab these books. But what I wanted to share, my pressing question that I noticed, oh my goodness, they're already saying, Joyce, you're an amazing writer, and thank you guys for watching. So Sally and Dawn, you talked about them, and the way you describe Eleanor and Cam, they remind me of Sally and Dan. Are they based on them?
Sally and Dan? Who are
Sally? Sally and Dan in your book were some of the people that lived in the town near J.D. Salinger. And
God. You know, I don't reread my old books, so I didn't have a clue who you were talking about. And also I changed people's names. No.
Okay, because he made wooden bowls too, and they were into like a homeopathic life, and I was like, these two sound familiar.
You actually look a little closer. Probably there are readers tuning in who have been reading my work for a while, and if they are, they'll recognize a lot of things from my own life. We should say to the people who haven't read this book, because it's only been out a week, Count the Ways is the story of a family that tracks over 40 years from when they fall in love in the early 70s, have their children get pulled in a million directions the way you do when you're a parent of young children, and lose sight of each other. And there's a terrible tragedy in the family that I'm obviously not going to tell you. And the wife, Eleanor, cannot forgive her husband, Cam. And this really brings about the end of their marriage. But I don't leave the story there. I follow them through several other decades into the 2000s. And it's the biggest book I've ever written. And I really wanted to explore marriage and divorce and the children of divorce and forgiveness, which has been a long time coming in my own life. So anyway, people who know my story know that I fell in love and was married in the early 70s and had 3 children and lived on a farm in New Hampshire, like my character. I am not this woman, but I think any writer who tells you that she's not in her book is not being true. I'm always in my book. And this one probably, for anybody who's familiar with my work and maybe read my old newspaper columns, domestic affairs, or earlier novels of mine, can see pieces of my story. But they're my story looked at through the perspective of somebody my age, which is not to say that this is a book for older people, but I bring a kind of understanding of marriage and divorce that I didn't have when I was 35. And I think I wish I'd had it. I wish I'd read this book when I was 35, actually, or 40. So yes, I had forgotten those characters, but in fact, I was married to an artist and not a maker of burl bowls, but I love burl bowls.
Yes, I have one on my table. That's why I Googled them. That's what that's called.
Yeah.
One of the quotes that I loved in the book was, sometimes a person needs to leave home to become who they need to be.
Yes.
And wow, that really hit, because I was so confused and angry when she left. I don't want to give too much away in the book, but I think that was pretty much said. But, you know, one of the other quotes in the book is, how does it happen that a person with whom you have shared your most intimate moments, greatest love, pain, joy, and also grief can become a stranger? And I thought, wow, if that isn't, and I agree with you, I'm 39, and reading this book now, I think made me understand a lot of things that I do that could be breaking of a marriage, even if you're not careful. And so it was really cool to read this in your point of view as someone who has been through the thick of it and really come through and seen all the angles. And another quote that you said was, sometimes you leave a place because you don't like being there. Sometimes you leave because you love it too much. Yeah. Can you say more about that? What do you mean by that?
Well, the central character in the book is a woman named Eleanor, who I love. I mean, I come to love all my characters, even the ones who sometimes are very flawed and do hurtful, difficult things. There's no villains in my novels, and no heroes or heroines. So Eleanor loves the farm that they live on. And her big dream has been to create a family. She didn't come from a very healthy, functional family, and she wanted to make one, as I did when I was young. I used to say the only way I'll be part of a happy family is to give birth to one. So when her marriage falls apart, she is the one who decides that she must leave the farm, not her husband. Even though probably had she chosen otherwise, she could have been the one to stay. And actually, this too mirrors my life. I raised my children, gave birth to my children. I had 3 babies born at home on that farm that I lived on. And when my marriage ended, it was too sad to be there. And Eleanor feels this. The dream of what she had hoped to build there was shattered, and she didn't want to live in the ashes of that. So, and what she does ends up becoming a terrible heartache for her. She conceals from her children a central truth about her divorce from their father, and she does it as mothers do to protect her children. Yeah. But in the end, not the end, but in the middle, the children resent her deeply, and they don't know the truth, so they don't have the information to look at her choices with understanding, and they blame her for the divorce. One of the stories in this book tells many stories.
So many stories. This book has depth.
One story is the story of one of her adult children becoming totally alienated from her, and she can't even see her grandchild. And I mean, for this woman, this is one of the greatest pains that there could be. One of the things that I do, Erin, in addition to writing books, mostly I write books, but a few times a year I teach workshops, mostly for women. I help women tell their stories. Women of all different writing levels. Sometimes women who've never written anything, they say, I'm not a writer. But I do it because I so believe in helping women to tell the things that they've been bottling up and not telling. And over the course of the 25 years that I've been working with women in the telling of their stories, sometimes they get published, often they don't, but it's always a good thing.
How cathartic.
I've met so many women who've had that story, and nobody ever talks about it. So this isn't the big story of the novel, but one of the stories that I look at is a mother becoming alienated from one of the most precious people in her life, her child. And I know that is a story that many women will understand because it's happened to them.
Not one that will mourn or really necessarily resonate, but something we'll think back on. This is a book that'll stay with you guys. You definitely need to get it. I would say, and you need to own it. I'm a big library girl. I probably shouldn't say that on Amazon, but I am a library girl.
I totally understand.
Libraries are amazing too, but I will say,
I'm a single parent. I wasn't buying hardback books, but I appreciate you saying that.
Yes, this is an amazing book that helps moms really maybe even write a better story and really get their book out. So we do have a question I'd love for you to answer.
Let's see.
It's by Nando, and they said if I buy the Audible version, who reads it?
Me. That's
Yes.
so important.
Yes, it's
Thank
so
you.
important. I'm so glad
Thank
you
you for
said that.
asking. I won't let anybody else read my books out loud. And, I have to say, there are some writers who are wonderful writers who aren't particularly good readers, but
Yeah.
I am.
Well,
I love to read out loud. I used to love to read out loud to my children. And when I write, I read out loud because I can hear the rhythms of the sentences. So I was going to tell your audience that that I don't think there's any bad way to experience this book, but if you're into audiobooks, I want to particularly recommend this audiobook.
they're all commenting that they're getting the audio now. That is awesome.
I've recorded.
I want the audio.
I think I've recorded my last 6 books.
That is amazing.
There was one that I couldn't record because it was a male narrator, and my son Will, who's an actor, recorded it Labor Day, my novel Labor Day.
I just realized that he was your son when I was doing a little research. I was like, I know that show, Heart of Dixie, right?
Heart of Dixie.
Yes, I watched. I thought he's my age. I watched that.
Yeah. I'm very proud of my son, and he's a wonderful actor. He was on a show called All Rise too, but he's probably best known for being this Alabama bartender with a heart of gold who took his shirt off a lot. But he read Labor Day, and he did a great job.
That is awesome. And that's really cool that he can show up and do that for you. And he'll always have that memory. I'm sure it's weird to think of your kids having your books and reading them. And I know I would probably feel the same, but having him read that and have that for your legacy, Joyce, is phenomenal. Phenomenal. I know you're a grandmother too, right? Are you a grandma?
I am.
Okay.
I have 4-year-old and 2-year-old granddaughters.
You've created a dynamic legacy for your family with these books, and just really shared that. People are really excited for you and having really great comments. C. Norton said the book is so good, incredibly moving and heartfelt. And it's the type of book you want to send to all of your girlfriends. I agree. I had to digest this book a little bit. The ending floored me a little. I had to go back because I was mad for a minute. I was like, what? And then I was like, okay, fair enough. This is what I would do too. And that's where you said the forgiveness and love and everything wrapped in. This book was about depth. And
I want to read. So my daughter, the oldest of my children, my daughter Audrey, some years back when I was having a problem with somebody, it was actually a problem with somebody very dear to me, but I was having a forgiveness issue, and she told me, Audrey kind of believes in magic in a wonderful way, and she said to me, Mom, there's this very powerful prayer that you can say at any point that you are having a difficulty with a person. You can say this to them, and there are 4 lines, and you can say them in any order. It doesn't matter. But if you say them and believe them, and you say them to the person you're having the very hard time with, it will get better. So those 4 lines are at the epigraph of the book, and I'll say them to you. It's not easy saying these lines and meaning them to somebody that you've had a really hard time with. But the lines are, and you can say them in any order: I love you. Please forgive me. Thank you. And I'm sorry.
Oh, that is beautiful.
It's called the Ho'oponopono prayer. It's a Hawaiian, an ancient Hawaiian prayer. And you could say, I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. Or you could say, thank you. I love you. Please forgive me. You could do it in any order. But this is really a book about surrendering and letting go of, we don't just forgive somebody, we need to forgive ourselves too. And we need to be forgiven. And I needed to, my character needed to let go of an anger that was going to eat her up from inside. Oh. And I understand that feeling. I'm not going to pretend I have always been able to do that.
Wow, that is so powerful. Wow. And
I think the book is worth the price just for that Ho'oponopono prayer.
had
But
so
you can
many
also Google.
emotions reading this, and I had to unpack some things, Joyce. I was like, wow.
Like what? Tell me.
Well, okay, so I think, and this is just kind of something I work on, and one of the things I think about a lot is that we all have trauma in various ways. And I have this thought that if we don't heal and work through our trauma, no matter how it is, it's just trauma, it's hurtful to us. We will filter out.
We pass it on.
We do generationally pass it on, but we also filter our lives through that wound.
Yeah.
So we allow that pain to steal our life experiences. And I think I had this shift personally 4 years ago when I had really bad postpartum depression after my last baby. Very, very bad. And I was just not the mom I wanted to be, not the wife I wanted to be. And I hurt, everything filtered through that hurt. And I kind of went on this radical, like self-changing journey of just, like you said, forgiveness.
This is when you embarked on your weight loss journey?
It is, yes. And so that's where I did a lot of healing. And I think one of the real reasons, the true reason how I was able to lose and maintain so much weight loss, because I didn't lose what people typically lose. I lost way more. I think I lost a lot of emotional weight. I think for every pound I lost, which was 150, by the way, I lost 5 pounds, 25 pounds of mental weight. And I think as moms and women, you know, we are carrying a lot of burden, a lot of the household tasks, and a lot of those things sometimes in our marriages. And sometimes we do it because we think we have to do it. And sometimes it's communication issues and things like that. And that's something I've worked on with my own husband. He's amazing and it helps me. But sometimes we just have to lay out our expectations. And for years, I just didn't. I just did everything, kind of like Eleanor did in the book. And
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that, you know, this book does not address in an open way a weight loss journey or
no, it has nothing to do with that.
Well, yes and no. In some ways, although that's not my personal story, I mean, I have seldom met a woman who doesn't have major issues around her body and food.
Yes.
So yes, of course, I've got those. And the character of Eleanor certainly has issues around, you know, after she has a baby and her body doesn't look, you know, the way her husband's body does after a baby. Nothing happened to him.
Right. He was eating steak.
but in another way, I actually love it that that probably in our audience are women who have had that particular struggle, because this is a book about shame and about
it really is
women kind of stuffing their own feelings and needs for the sake of everybody else, and taking it in and sort of making sure that everybody else is okay. And that was me, absolutely. And it can take lots of forms. It can there are many ways that you can not love yourself and fail to value yourself. And this character certainly suffers from that and overcomes it. I'm not a writer who I don't want to leave my characters in a place of pain is real and sorrow is a part of life, but I want to bring them to some level of getting through it and finding the other side. And that's really important.
That's one of the things I love about your books. They're messy. They are messy. They're not, but real life is messy.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes generationally we're raised that we have to have everything look good and we can't talk about the bad. And that's not real life. That's like seeing everyone's highlight reel on social media. It's not real life.
Right.
And I like seeing the messy because the messy makes us feel less alone.
It took me years, Erin, to be brave enough to show those parts of myself. I grew up in an alcoholic family and never talked about the fact that my father got drunk every night. And that was more terrifying than my father getting drunk. The fear that somebody would find out. I didn't know that anybody else had a parent who got drunk. I thought it was just in my family and nowhere else. And I just saw these perfect families on TV, and I thought all my friends at school had perfect families. And I was keeping this, it was huge pressure to maintain this persona of somebody whose life was figured out. And in my writing life, I recognized that I owe it to readers to show real flesh and blood women that make mistakes. The mother in Count the Ways is, I don't know what a good mother is. She tries her best, and she loves her children, and she's full of energy and imagination and devotion, but she also loses it. There's a as you know in the book, there's a place she goes to that she calls Crazy Land, when she at one point her daughter loses the shoe to her Barbie on her birthday. And
I have so done that. I have done things like that.
Eleanor tears the house apart. And officially, of course, why is she doing this? To protect her child from the sorrow and pain of losing a Barbie shoe. And what did she produce? Sorrow and pain much greater. Her daughter sees her mother going nuts. I know about women like that.
Yeah.
We
are women like that. Yeah.
I one time, one of my sons, I just bought him, it was a special treat, and I had bought him a set of juggling balls. And we were walking into a Subway, and I was so good at anticipating things that might create loss, and because I couldn't bear them. Not for myself, I couldn't bear my children's loss. And he's juggling, and I'm saying, no, Charlie, don't juggle. But I was just a little too slow. One of the juggling balls fell into the pit of the Subway. And you know what I did? I jumped into the pit. I jumped to with it. And my daughter was, screaming, Mom, I lost it completely. All I could think of was, I have to save him the lost juggling ball. And I might have incurred the lost mother, the squished mother. I didn't. I climbed up out of the Subway. And that's an extreme story, but
we all have those stories. We do. And we feel so alone. And when we hear those things, we're like, oh my gosh, I totally have done weird things like that. I get that. And we feel a little less alone with our hard stuff. And that brings me into the next point that I had written down to talk about. Was, you said, this is a quote from your book, so much time had passed in which she had no time that she no longer knew what to do if she had any. And I thought, wow, gut to the heart as a mother, because we do so much in all the things. And Eleanor really was a busy mother, cooking from scratch and canning and gardening and being the breadwinner and
making little cork people.
Yes, she was a stellar mother. And sometimes I think, looking back as someone who's been divorced for 17 years now, I think I created maybe a persona about my children's dad that wasn't maybe accurate. And they're a little older now and they can see what they see. And I wish I would have been a little more Switzerland back then and not so positive, because I think I created a positive person that maybe didn't exist all the time. And it created an expectation that was not met on the other end. And I think I did that in a way to be really positive. That was my own little version of Crazy Land, because I wanted to be that positive co-parent. And what I did was create something that didn't exist. And that was met with disappointment, I think, sometimes. And so we all screw up as moms. We all try to shield our kids. That was me shielding my kids from dropping the ball in the pit. And that was me laying in the pit so that they wouldn't fall in the pit. Yeah. And we all have that. And I feel like if we don't carve time, that white space, that margin time as women, not just mothers, we have a lot of women watching, and men, although I don't see a lot of men saying, gosh, I feel like such a bad dad. I didn't give my all today in the home. I think it's more women mostly. Yep. But you guys can tell me if I'm wrong in the comments, of course.
And I want to say, Erin, I never think of myself as writing for women. I write for readers. But isn't it interesting that people would suppose, I'm trying to get into better light here because the sun is
Yeah.
really beautiful where I am, but the sun
It is beautiful.
Why do we suppose that a book that deals with family, relationships, love, loss, that would only be a book for women? Men know about those
Yeah,
things.
absolutely, they do. One of the things I love that you did in the book that was so good is you created these details so perfect that I just envision this whole family and their lives perfectly. How do you organize that when you're writing? Do you have like a giant whiteboard? Do you?
I do have a whiteboard.
You do?
I do have a whiteboard. You know, I'm going to move to just so that the sun
You're
is
fine. Absolutely.
Here we go.
Yeah. Get comfy. We're doing our
maybe,
interview.
Maybe I'll go out on my porch and you can see
Okay.
New Hampshire too. So
take us to New Hampshire, Joyce.
I'm not one of those writers who has the whole story figured out. I'm just going to show you. This is my. You can't see the lake too well because it's backlit, but I'm at a little cabin in New Hampshire, and this is where I write most of my books. I come here
that
in
is
the summer.
Beautiful.
It's only in the summer. It's not insulated. It gets pretty cold by October, but this is where I am now. So I'm going to sit on a rocking chair and keep on talking to you.
They all say, I love New Hampshire. I have been, and it is one of my favorite places too.
So I don't ever know how a book of mine is going to end.
Okay.
What I know is I don't plan it all out. And I think it kind of adds an energy to my writing. I'm not saying it's bad for a writer to do that, but in my process, I'm reading the book as I'm writing it, and I can't wait to find out what happens. But what I do know, especially when I get near the end, I think 20 pages from the end of Count the Ways, I didn't know how this book was going to end, and I was a little worried, like, what are these people going to do? And how am I going to? I don't want to leave them in trouble, but what would happen? And then I fall back on what would they do? Because I know my characters. I've lived with them for 400 pages. And in my case, I'd lived with these characters for 3 years. I knew them. And they direct the story. It's happened to me again and again. My novel, Labor Day, I was, oh my God, I thought, how am I going to get out of this one? These two people, love each other, but one's a convict on the run. The police are moving in. The son has just betrayed his mother without meaning to. The man is a good man and he didn't commit the crime, and then I figured it out because the characters figured it out. It won't be happily ever after. I don't write that, but I don't ever want to leave you depressed. I want to.
No, it was really, you tied this one up with a bow, an unexpected bow.
Well, I hope not a bow. I hope
a bow,
little bit of a messy
pleasant. It wasn't unpleasant.
Bow,
it was messy. Everything was messy about this book, but so raw.
This is the first book. I'll ask you, actually, I'll ask your opinion, and maybe if there are readers tuned in who've read this book already, I'll ask them. This is, when I publish a book, I always hear from readers who love the book who say, oh, would you write a sequel? And really what they're saying is, I didn't want the book to be over, but I've never felt I could write a sequel. This time round, I'm actually thinking, because of where I leave the characters, that I could write a sequel, and I might want to, because I miss these characters, and I might not be quite done with them. So I'll ask you, and if there's somebody tuned in who wants to offer their thoughts, whether you'd be up for a sequel.
I definitely would, and I have a unique idea.
What's that?
I think you should write it from her daughter's point of view.
Oh, interesting.
Because when they had their situation at the end there,
which we won't say,
I could see both sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the mom kind of did what I did with my own marriage on the other end, and I could see where you could go back in time and tell her story. And that would be interesting. And I think you could kind of take it start it in like present day, where you ended it in this book. And then
it ends in 2009. It ends in 2009. So there'd be another 12 years.
I would love to see you take it from 2009 all the way back to where they were little and they did the little cork people, and take it through her story, watching her her sister go through everything and
Interesting.
all of that. And then take it to a place where we see some redemption for Eleanor.
Wow.
Because this poor woman had no redemption, and every single relationship in her life failed her. So,
Well, she's had some. I'm going to push back a little bit on that one. I mean, yes, she has been hugely hurt, and she's experienced
yes,
big loss.
lots of hurt, not failure.
She had a true best friend who really knew her,
Oh,
and we won't say what happened there. And the character of Timmy, the man who she has a love affair after her marriage ends, and a very unexpected love affair
mhm,
with a significantly younger man,
mhm.
and who really treasures her. And you know, the fact that people don't end up together doesn't necessarily, in my book, mean that it wasn't a really important experience. She was loved.
She was loved. That's
She
true.
was greatly loved. She was treasured.
Did
And
not see what happened there coming, though.
Mm.
That was a twist. There were a lot of twists to this. I do love how we got to see Eleanor from the beginning. I love that we got to see her from the teenager to the middle-aged mom. And I love that we got to see her heart before children, and we got to see the messiness, and we got to walk through it. And that was very unique, that time span in such a, well, it was a good sized book. But I mean, I felt like it wasn't too long. It was just right. It was impactful.
It is my longest book. And it's funny, you know, I have such devoted readers that there were women who were waiting for this book for months. They knew it was coming, and they were waiting for it for months. And then they were saying, I don't want it to be over too fast, because I know when it's over, you know, I'll have to wait another couple of years. And I said to them, oh, don't worry, it's 464 pages. It'll last for a while. But it didn't. It didn't. They read it really fast.
It was very easy to read. If you, and I'm a busy mom, and I read a lot because I do the show, but I couldn't stop. You warned me. You said it'll take you a little bit, and I thought, okay, I really want to take it in and enjoy it, and I did. But it was, I couldn't put it down. There were a lot of late nights where I stayed up a little too late.
Good. That's what I want. Good.
So I also love that you said sometimes we get so angry and sad we don't know how to be happy anymore or find our way back to that place. Have you, that had to have come from a place of someone who can understand that?
Yeah.
What are some things that you, because I know, like you said, a lot of this is you, but not all of it. And you said that in the beginning of the book, that these are fictional people who are wrapped up in experiences you've had as an author, and this is your art and your craft. What does that look like for you as a person? How do you find that happy place for you? What makes you happy?
Well, I mean, lots of things make me happy. My work makes me happy. Readers make me happy. Hearing the last week, it's about 10 days since this book was published, and I have been getting the best letters, and I love them. I love to hear. I read every letter. I want people to know, and if they want to reach out to me, they can go to my Facebook page, or they can go to my website, and if they write me a letter about my work or about whatever, I'll read it. My family, of course, makes me happy. But ultimately, I think we have to feel happy within ourselves. And maybe that's part of what the connection that you felt as a person who's gone through a major weight loss and held it and recognized, you know, that and connected to your strength to be able to do that, that it comes from within. Nobody can get you to lose 150 pounds. Nobody can make you do that. That's you. That's you. And I think this character, at the end of the day, she heals herself. Nobody comes along and fixes your life. If you're taking good care of yourself and loving yourself, good will come. And I have learned this. If you're angry and bitter, sometimes the opposite will come.
Yeah. This is so good. Do you have any advice for aspiring authors? I mean, I know you do teach a workshop. When is your next one?
Well, there's one workshop that's sort of like my big deal workshop I've been doing for 21 years. And to a lot of people say, oh, I would never do that. It is in a very unlikely place. Typically, writers' workshops are in places like Tuscany and Provence or, Napa. My workshop, my week-long workshop, only for women, and women of all different levels, some are very experienced, some have not written anything since high school, is in a small Mayan village on the shores of what may be the most beautiful lake in the world in Guatemala, looking out at 5 volcanoes. And I have a house there. I've had a house there for over 20 years. So once a year, I gather a small group of women who write to me about their lives and say, I want to tell my story. And we work very close and honestly about their lives. Some of them have gone on to publish books. Some of them, that's not the point. But whatever happens, the act of telling your story honestly is so powerful. It has changed my life doing that. So anyway, you can find out about that workshop and smaller, shorter workshops on my website, which is just Joyce.
Awesome.
But I know the power of it partly, Erin, because I was a secret keeper for a long time, and I know how painful that was. I was pretending that my family was different from how my family really was. As you know from reading At Home in the World, I made a young, very, very damaging relationship with a much older man when I was 18 years old, a very famous man, J.D. Salinger, who sought me out and suggested that I drop out of college and move in with him, and I did. And then I didn't tell that had happened for 25 years after he sent me away. And I felt this great shame. Shame is a big theme in my life and my writing, and I suspect shame is a big theme for women who have eating disorders and eating issues and body issues. Shame is not a word that's big in my vocabulary. When that book, At Home in the World, the one that told that story, it was a memoir, was published, there was one word that came out again and again in the reviews of that book, and it was shameless. Joyce Maynard is shameless, meaning I told the truth, as if that is the most terrible thing to do. So if you want my first advice,
I was like, shameless, like she has no shame. She is going to show up and share her truth. I took that as a power word. I was like, oh.
I mean, there are a few people who should be ashamed of themselves, and we kind of know who they are and what they've done. But, we are all human and we make mistakes. So if I were giving a single sentence of advice to people listening who want to write, and especially if they want to write memoir, be shameless. Do not feel you have to tiptoe around uncomfortable truths. Dive straight into that wave and explore them. And you must not be thinking as you're doing this, what's my mother going to think? What are my children going to think? What's my husband going to think? This is your story belongs to you.
I agree. And I definitely think your book challenged people to examine their story and allow themselves to be messy and shameless. And I read a quote recently. I'm going to butcher it, I'm sure, but the context of it was pretty much, you can only feel shame if you allow yourself to feel shame. So if you put things out there and they are what they are, the most dangerous person in the world is the person that says, it just is what it is.
Yep.
Because they really do not care what anyone else.
I'll tell you a funny story. This is not one that I usually come around to. But I think in a way I'm telling this partly because I'm guessing that there are women listening who specifically have had issues with their bodies. So, big issue that I had with my body after I had my babies, 3 babies, breastfed them, loved breastfeeding them. I had the breasts of a woman who had breastfed 3 babies, and I felt shame. What was my shame about? That my breasts weren't perky and, like some model in a magazine or the Sports Illustrated swimsuit. That I was a woman who breastfed babies. My body looked like that. I'd also gone through pregnancies. My body looked like that. I had stretch marks. Okay. So right around the time that my marriage ended, my husband had left, but really we both failed in that marriage. My mother died, and there wasn't a lot of money in our family, but I took the little bit of money that my mother left, and I decided to get breast implants. And it wasn't because I wanted to have big breasts. I didn't want to be some kind of, pinup girl. I had this shame about these breastfeeding breasts. So I knew nothing about breast implants. I was a mom of 3 living in New Hampshire. I was kind of clueless. I wasn't, a Hollywood girl. And I went to the Yellow Pages and I got these breast implants, which were kind of ridiculous breast implants. The guy, I don't know what he was thinking, but he gave me these enormous breast implants. Okay, so I had these breast implants and I wrote about it. And you may remember, it's a little bit that I mentioned in At Home in the World, which was a book in which I felt it was really important that I not pick and choose my truths. So I wrote that story. And when At Home in the World was published, as you know from reading about it, the press came down on me in every conceivable way for writing about this famous man, for telling all kinds of things. And one of the things that they said was, Joyce Maynard, the writer with breast implants. I had been reduced to that, the writer who slept with a famous man, the writer.
That's all I had. Okay.
This was so not, my identity, but it became, and it was said again and again, breast implants. Okay, so I'm on a talk show in Portland, Maine, and it's how TV works. Unlike your interview, which is nice and long and we can really talk, it's 5 minutes, quick hit, in, out. And we're talking about a book. I'm promoting a book. I think it was my novel, The Usual Rules, another book that I'm really proud of. And we had 30 seconds before we were cutting out. And incidentally, I was in Portland, Maine, because I'd been invited to a school to talk. And I was so happy that all these kids were watching this thing who had read The Usual Rules. And with about 20 seconds left, this host, typical morning TV host, says, "So, Joyce, I understand you've had breast implants." And I'm looking at the clock and I have like 15 seconds left. And I'm thinking about all the people out there in morning TV land.
That is so bizarre.
And and I thought, I am going to look straight in that camera and say, yes, Rob, I did. And I suspect there are a lot of women watching this program right now, maybe standing in front of the mirror, feeling really bad about their bodies, who just wanted to feed their babies in a healthy way and give birth. And they don't look like a model. And maybe they feel a little bad and they really shouldn't. But, if it'll help them out to go and do something like get breast implants, I am not going to judge them. And do you really want to judge them yourself? Cut to commercial.
Shots fired. Joyce Maynard, she's in the house.
And
That's
I am so
yes.
I mean, I really feel for. I mean, I'm the mother of 2 sons. I love men. I love boys. I care about the pain of any human being who feels it. But I'm a champion of women. Women work harder, do more, get put down, get marginalized. And in my books, I try to just raise them up and say, if you're home with children, you are working.
Yeah.
If your body doesn't look like, I can't even name the model of the moment, but, Kate Moss or whoever from, years ago, really, what does that say? Is that some kind of big shame that it doesn't?
Yeah.
Maybe your priorities lie somewhere else than, having a whole lot of surgery and spending 5 hours a day in the gym. So,
I feel like too, I think we need to normalize not talking about people's bodies, because I find that in my space on the internet, which we talk about bodies, but when people, strangers specifically on the internet too, will say, "Tell me about what is your weight?" And I'm like, why do we ask that? That's very bizarre. And I usually respond kindly and say, "Hey, why are you asking about my body? And why does it matter to you? And tell me more about why you said that." And usually they think, "Oh, wait, that is kind of weird." And I think that's a new normal we have to have.
I have to tell you, I'm hopeful for the younger generation. I mean, you've got kids, and do you have some daughters in there?
I do. I have an Audrey as well.
Oh, that's right.
Yes,
You told me that. So I'm one of the things that an unlikely thing that I've been doing in the last 3 years is I went back to college. I mentioned that I had dropped
I
out of
saw
college.
that. That is
And
amazing.
so I'm living in a community of, I mean, I took last year, I of course, COVID, I wasn't around my fellow students much, but I'll be back in September. And I live around 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 year olds. I want to tell you, they don't they don't do this stuff in the same way that my generation did. They're not starving themselves. There are exceptions, of course. They want to be healthy. They do not make comments about each other's bodies.
Oh,
And
that
they're
makes me happy.
and I don't want to generalize about a whole generation because there's always, our culture really lays it
Absolutely.
on women. But I do feel hope in that department. And I hope you see that in your daughters.
I work really hard to teach my kids about balance and loving their body at every size and not focusing on size, not focusing on our bodies and
Mhm.
just eating. One of the things I loved about your book, because I'm also a gardener, a canner, I cook a lot of food and I love food. I'm a big foodie. I do cooking shows here on Amazon even. And
Yeah.
I've taught my kids to just love food and just food is a tool. It's not some evil thing that's going to destroy us. And I do. I'm raising all my kids really, but even my older kids have had a front row seat to this train wreck. They
Mhm.
got to see me at my lowest and see me at my greatest. And I hope they take that as a legacy item there from me that,
Mhm.
it's okay to be messy and go through stuff. It's okay to come out
Mhm.
and do your best and come out on top and just grow and be humble. And I try to always, teach my kids that I make mistakes too as a mom and
Mhm.
just allow that space for them. But yeah, I think that is
Right.
very important to take from this book too, that family is messy and that our experiences are messy. One of the questions that one of our readers had that I don't want to skip on because we're going to be wrapping
Right.
this up and I know they're going to be getting your books here on Amazon is, this is from C. Norton. She said, this was the first of your books that I have read. And this is for either of us, which Joyce Maynard book should I read next?
Oh my gosh. Your name is C?
C.
Um,
Norton is the name on Amazon,
okay.
but they.
I, you know, I don't have a favorite book any more than I have a favorite child. And I'd have to know you to know what your issues were. But I don't think you can go wrong. I'm proud of them all. I At Home in the World is in a different category because it's a memoir, and it's a
Mhm.
story that I love to give to young women or women who have also experienced shameful silences. The Best of Us was the memoir that I published right before this book, which is about when I was 57 years old. I found my very good second husband and had a really good marriage. And then a year after we were married, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and I lost him 5 years ago. And so that's a book. It's not about cancer. It's not about death. It's actually a love story. In the novel department, The Usual Rules is a favorite of mine. Labor Day is a favorite of mine. Labor Day was a movie, and I think
Yes,
the book is better than the movie, actually, which is usually the case.
usually the case.
The Good Daughters, if you want to read about a
So
strong.
this is this one. My aunt just finished this one, and we had to discuss. It was so
Oh,
good,
oh,
so
good.
good.
That one does have a big surprise in it. After her,
Yes.
After her is a bit of a thriller.
Okay.
Baby Love is my very first novel, and it's kind of a wild novel. I wrote it when I was 27. I didn't really know how to write a novel, but I I I love that book. I wanted to have another baby, and my husband said we can't afford another baby, and I said I'm going to earn a baby, and Baby Love is the novel that I earned my son Charlie. Um,
Aw.
so I don't think you can go wrong. See, and
No,
then you'll
I
read the
don't
next
either.
one, and I hope you'll read one after that.
Well, that's actually my next question is what do you have in the works? What can we look forward to from you?
Well, I actually have another whole novel that I wrote during the pandemic. I finished Count the Ways during the pandemic. I had a really great pandemic, and I'm not going to feel guilty and bad, to say that. I know that, a lot of people had a really hard time, and if you had young children at home, that was a whole other story. But for me, it was this great opportunity to work really hard and focus on my work, and I had actually invited 2 young women who had come to my writing workshop in Guatemala to stay with me in Guatemala, and we lived together for 6 months. And I think very fondly of that time. So I wrote another novel there that's called The Bird Hotel that I'm going to be working on, and a nonfiction book about going back to Yale. And I'm now starting to think that I may be writing a sequel to Count the Waves. So
Yes. Oh
let
my
me
gosh,
know.
we all are excited for that.
And I really liked your idea, Erin. So I can't be writing while I'm doing this. I'm very involved in talking to readers and, having experiences like this, which are wonderful. But when all of that is done, I will unplug the phone, turn off the internet, and I will sit with myself. And I suspect I'll probably dive into a lake and take a long swim or take a long walk, and I'll wait and see what story comes to me.
I love that. Well, everyone, you can find Joyce at her website. Just Google Joyce Maynard. She comes up. She's amazing. You can grab all her books down below. I know that she would love that. And you will not be disappointed.
You can just start with one. Start with one and just see if it disappoints you. I don't think it will.
It will not. It will not. But Count the Waves is one of and I have that pulled up in the carousel. You definitely want to grab that one. It's such a good read and just so much depth there. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, I love this, Erin.
Fantastic.
Now I'm going to tune into your interviews. You do such a great job. So
thank you. Definitely hit that follow button, everyone, because we have so many amazing interviews coming up that you guys will not want to miss. I just want to bring these awesome authors and their stories to you so that you can just learn about more good books that maybe you haven't thought of reading and just bring some inspiration. So thank you so much, Joyce. I hope you get some relaxation. It sounds like you've been on a whirlwind book release. Well-deserved rest at your beautiful cabin and your lake. And thank you so much for joining us.
Good talking. Really.
All right. Thanks.